Good morning. I'm Betty Willis. I'm in Emory's Office of Government and Community Affairs, and it gives me great pleasure this morning to introduce a longtime friend, trusted advisor, and probably the best example of a Renaissance man you will ever meet, Doug Hooker. I'm going to try to read this fast because this is just a snapshot of the many, many accomplishments Doug has, so bear with me. So Doug leads the Atlanta Regional Commission, which convenes local government leaders, their community partners, and residents to develop strategies for improving the region's quality of life and to address the challenges of a rapidly emerging future. The agency's work addresses community development, transportation and mobility, water, natural resources, arts and culture, aging and independent services, workforce solutions, homeland security, community research, analytics, and more. I think y'all covered everything, Doug. Doug has worked for public sector and private sector organizations, including Atkins Global, the City of Atlanta, BioLab, Georgia Power, and the State Road and Tollway Authority. Through the different facets of his career, he's been able to work on local and regional issues involving education, energy, public works, sustainability, transit, transportation, and water. Doug is involved in his community and his profession. His board service includes the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta, the Aurora Theater, the Atlanta Music Project, the Council for Quality Growth, the Fox Theater Institute, and the advisory boards of the Ivan Allen College, Agnes Scott College, and he chaired Emory's Board of Visitors a few years back. In the past, he served on the boards of many more civic, community, and professional organizations. His current professional service includes being first vice president of the Executive Directors Council of the National Association of Regional Councils. He's a founding and active member of the Major Metros Seminar Group. Recently, he has joined the National Advisory Board for the Strong, Prosperous, and Resilient Communities Challenge. He's an alumnus of several leadership programs, including Leadership Atlanta, Leadership Georgia, the Regional Leadership Institute, which the ARC puts on, Leadership PBS&J, and the Institute of Georgia Environmental Leadership. He's received numerous awards and recognitions, including the Distinguished Alumnus Award from the Ivan Allen College School of Public Policy, Atlanta Magazine's 500 Most Influential Atlantans, the 100 Most Influential Georgians from Georgia Trend Magazine, the 100 Most Influential Atlantans from the Atlanta Business Chronicle, and the 10 Most Influential Atlantans from the Atlanta Tribune. Doug holds a bachelor's and master's degrees from Georgia Tech. He has an MBA from Emory, our Goes Away to Business School, and he's married to Patrice Hooker, who is also a rock star in her own right. She's an Emory Law School alum and former president of the Georgia Bar Association. In his spare time, and I don't know how you have spare time, Doug, but he studies and composes music, and this is like serious composition of symphonies that have been performed by orchestras. He also plays the oboe, and one of his favorite things that he loves to do is he records books for the page impaired. And when you hear his baritone voice, you'll know why he's so good at that. Doug loves to travel with his wife and spend time with his grandchildren. And we are really, and I told you he was a Renaissance man when you hear all this, but we are really happy that you took the time to join us today, Doug. You've got your own huge breakfast, your annual breakfast tomorrow morning with 1,500 of your closest friends. So thank you for taking the time to be here today. Please help me welcome Doug Hooker.
So Betty and I have been friends for a very long time, and I'm going to have to take her to task for boring you with all that stuff. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Betty, for your gracious introduction. And thanks to Emory University for hosting this wonderful conference, and to the Ray C. Anderson Foundation, John Lanier, and your family for all of your support for so many of our critical environmental issues, and particularly for this conference. I want to say a brief thanks to my colleagues from the Atlanta Regional Commission, several of whom are here this morning. I want to call them out and ask them if they would stand very quickly to be recognized. Danny Johnson, Aileen Danny, Crystal Jackson. Come on, Crystal, stand up. Aileen, where are you? I know I saw you were here earlier. Oh, there you are. Okay. So these folks really help me every day in all of our work around climate and resilience. So thank you all for being here this morning. And I also want to call out, and he didn't know I was going to do this, but I'm going to call out the name of a young man who really was the genesis of all of our climate work at the Atlanta Regional Commission. And he did this in the face of, I will say, speaking truth to power. David D'Onofrio, who used to be our air quality planner and who has been following and studying issues of climate change and meteorology for a long time, very early in my administration and leadership, said we really need to address this issue. And we both knew that our board was not very friendly to the words climate and change put together. So we began to talk about the approach of resiliency. But David very boldly led us in a lot of that work. David has now gone on to work with the Federal Highway Administration, but we owe a deep debt of gratitude to him. So David, wherever you are, can you please stand and be recognized? Thank you. Most importantly, I want to thank all of you for taking your time out of your schedules to come here today, and it's truly an honor for me to spend a few minutes with colleagues who are preparing our state for the changes that are both here now and rapidly heading our way over the next several decades. And by the way, if you don't like my comments, you can blame Daniel Rockberg, because we were on a program together with Rose Scott's A Closer Look a few weeks back, and never met before, but then a couple of days later, Daniel said, "Hey, can you make some comments at the conference?" And I'm like, okay, well, you're gonna get what you get, so here I am. Preparation, of course, is the key, and that's why we're all here. With all that's happening with our weather patterns, rising oceans, and other factors, we have to prepare for a more resilient future. Georgia's economy is strong and growing fast. We are home to the nation's fastest growing port, world's busiest airport, and our agricultural industry is still strong, although, Michael Schwartz, I think we need to change all the Peachtree Streets to Blueberry Lanes now. It's still strong, but it is being assaulted. And in just a few years, we've become a top location for film production, and we have a rapidly growing high-tech sector as well. Georgia's a great place to do business, as we just learned for the 7th year in a row, named the best state to do business. By all historical and traditional measures, things are going well in Georgia. However, all of us are here because we realize that traditional and historic measures have rendered a very incomplete picture of our world. Indeed, we are here because we realize our future demands new ways of thinking, new ways of planning, and new ways of being. At the Atlanta Regional Commission, it's our job to help the region anticipate tomorrow's challenges and needs in order to maintain our region's economic competitiveness and to remain a great place to live. All of you in this room know that our climate is changing, and it has been for a while. Our weather is growing more extreme. Between the years 1945 and 2000, Georgia experienced 3 significant droughts. However, since 2000 alone, we've had 5, including the one that we're currently in. And if you didn't know that we're in a drought, please know that we are very much in a drought. In 2009, we saw a 500-year flood that shut down major interstates in metro Atlanta and partially flooded the Six Flags amusement park, not to mention the numbers of homes and schools and other facilities that were devastated. And last year, we had a hurricane that was still a Category 3 strength when it came into Georgia and devastated Georgia farms. And as Dr. Shepard remarked, this year we are on track to be the region's hottest year, and in Metro Atlanta we've had more than 90 days of 90-plus degree heat. More than 90 days of 90-plus degree heat. Half of all the state's daily heat records have been broken during this decade. And not only has that heat affected our crops, our water supply, and our health, but it's also meant that this year we were running our air conditioners at maximum power well into October, unless you were brave to turn them off and just sweat it out. As we plan for this future, we must consider our continued growth. ARC recently has forecasted that our nation's population will increase by 2.9 million people by 2050. That's the equivalent of metropolitan Denver picking up and moving here over the next 30 years. That is enormous. That means that the impact of every drought, every flood, and heat wave will be magnified even more so in the years to come. So where do we even begin to prepare for what seems like an overwhelming future? ARC has begun to take some meaningful steps in the areas of water and transportation resiliency, which are part of our portfolios. Not enough coffee yet. In the area of water, in 2015, the Metropolitan North Georgia Water Planning District, which is staffed by ARC staff, studied the risks that climate change poses to Georgia's water management. We provided a suite of adaptive approaches to efficiency, conservation, drought management plans, and safety. The Water District now requires that all of its utilities, all 55 of them, address climate risk and adaptive practices in their master plans as they are updated. The Water District has also put into place substantial water conservation measures that are having a huge impact for the better. For instance, we're helping residents replace older toilets, yes, toilets, and with newer, more highly efficient models. And I think we've passed over 125,000 at this point in time. And it may not sound like much, but it's had a huge impact on the amount of water we use. And we now have conservation pricing in the region so that the more water you use, the more you pay, as a way to encourage water users to be thoughtful about water conservation. And it's working. Since the year 2000, we've had more than 1.3 million new people in the region, and yet and still our total water withdrawals have decreased by more than 10%, which is good. But with 2.9 million people on the way, we have to redouble our efforts. In the area of transportation, as the planning agency for the region, we are constantly preparing for future events that could dramatically impact the Atlanta region's transportation infrastructure. And so from that perspective, we are adding resiliency to the list of criteria that transportation projects will be judged by in the future, as we are deciding which to select for federal funding in our long-range plan. Just this year, we kicked off a project that will help local governments better understand the economic, health, and safety impacts of extreme heat and flood events on their communities and their transportation infrastructure. And we continue to run the Georgia Commute Options Program, and actually 2 years ago, we took over the program for the entire region. Georgia DOT asked us to take it over. And through that program, to incentivize people to get out of their single occupancy vehicle and join a carpool, a van pool, or maybe walk or ride a bike. This helps to reduce stress on our infrastructure and hopefully holds down the growth in our harmful emissions. And believe it or not, we are the #1 region in the nation for businesses that telework. So it's starting to work, but obviously we need to do a lot more of it. And as our water and transportation planners begin their efforts to plan for greater resiliency, our one common thing keeps bubbling to the surface for us. And it's a very simple idea. And it's not a magic bullet, but it's something so simple that everybody can do something with it, and most people don't think about it, and that is green space. The more green space, the more green infrastructure we have in communities, the better off we will be. Of course, this is not news to most of you, but we can't assume that our governments, our neighbors, our families, and friends understand how critical it is to have nature be a part of the solution to healing nature. We have a long way to go to educate or inform so many of our residents and businesses about the growing value and the importance of green infrastructure in our future to help combat climate change. Green infrastructure helps our water systems by filtering runoff before it reaches our streams and lakes, making it easier and cheaper to maintain and improve water quality, not to mention it helps the natural environment. It also slows that runoff so that the streams and creeks are recharged naturally rather than impaired by flash runoff, reducing the impacts of downstream flooding. And at the same time, green infrastructure like plants and pervious surfaces keeps stormwater off our roads and keeps storm drains free of debris. And it helps to reduce our stresses on the surrounding natural environments. ARC is far from being alone in its efforts, as you certainly recognize. Your attendance here is evidence of that. However, there are a few other examples of things happening around the region that I want to share with you that you may not be aware of. The City of Atlantis 2017 Resilience Strategy is a document that has placed our region's core city in the vanguard of this fight amongst the cities in the nation. And the City of Decatur and Agnes Scott College have partnered on a resilience strategy, creating a model for public-private partnerships that can be emulated throughout much of the region and the state. And many of our region's local governments have taken steps to become certified as green communities through ARC's Green Communities program. And in fact, I'll take a little turn of phrase here and let you know that this year we're celebrating 10 years of our Green Communities program. And on December 4th, we will have a day-long program at the Kendita building, the new living building on Georgia Tech's campus, followed by a reception at 5:30 that evening, also at the Kendita building. Do I do a good job, Crystal? Okay, Crystal Jackson leads our Green Communities program. However, as good as that has been, we know that that is not sufficient for communities who want to take more aggressive steps on climate action. And so we are developing a separate climate action certification program for communities who want to and are ready to take that step. And increasingly, more communities want to do their part in the climate fight, literally the fight of the 21st century. It's critically important that everyone in this room and all of our local jurisdictions be a resource to all of our fellow friends, citizens, and neighbors in Metro Atlanta and throughout Georgia. As governments, businesses, and institutions, we can make resiliency part of our planning and our business models, much like Interface has done. We can convene and educate designers, engineers, architects, homeowners on the value of green infrastructure, resilient materials, and resilient products and processes. As individuals, we can retrofit our homes for water and energy efficiency. We can drive hybrid or electric vehicles. We can do more teleworking, use transit, carpools, or more opportunities for walking and biking. At this point, we may not be able to control the weather or even slow nature's roll, so to speak, but we can all work as individuals and as collective groups to protect our neighborhoods, our communities, our infrastructure, our environment, and most importantly, to protect our collective future and our world, minimizing our risk and maximizing our future. Thank you.